Da 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 da. Okay, I am pulling up the chat. Hold on a sec. Okay. Does anyone else find that super annoying how you have to switch it from, I don't know, maybe this is just on mine. I don't think so though. You have to switch it on the chat to view all chat instead of just the top chat. Otherwise, you like don't see anything. It's kind of annoying. Um, yeah, watch out for that. Otherwise, it's like, who determines what the top chat is? You know, like YouTube administrators. It's just a little bit odd. Uh, anyway, so yeah, there was just something I wanted to discuss. Last night on Olaf's stream, he brought up this subject of like how he was kind of raised um, with this paradigm that like sex is taboo, masturbation is taboo, and then when when he hears Zoomers or millennials, uh, talk about how they were raised, he's basically surprised that I don't any of those kind of traces of Christian morality were just maybe not there as much as they were when he was growing up. And he was born in like 78. I was born in 89, so I guess that's only like an 11-year difference. It also might have to do with, the fact that his family did take him to church. Like, I know my husband, he was baptized in an Episcopalian church, and then his family never really went. So that could be part of it too. And then some people in the chat were saying, like Glib Medley was saying, he shared a bathroom with his dad, and his dad would just leave like a Playboy magazine and a jar of Vaseline like out, like no one, it wasn't hidden. So it's like Olaf was basically saying like he always knew sex or like sex outside of marriage or whatever was like sinful and you're not supposed to do that. Hold on a second. I am paying for my parking. Hold on. I'm not gonna hit anything. Don't worry. Just hold your horses. I'm gonna drive very carefully. Okay. Claire, if you don't like it, then you don't have to be in here. I'm bringing it up because uh, Olaf on his stream last night was talking about all of these people on Twitter saying they want to ban pornography, and like he doesn't know if he's for or against it. For me, like with the pornography thing, I mean, I don't know. I don't really have. It's not something I've spent a whole lot of time thinking about because I do think it's more of like a guy issue. Like I've obviously never had a big problem looking at pornography. I don't think there's that many women that do really. Um, Men will still masturbate without porn. Okay. What the heck? I don't know why these people are honking. I couldn't go. They're being jerks. Okay. Now everyone's gonna say I'm a bad driver again. Anyway, okay. Back to what I originally wanted to say. Yeah, I think I was one of these people that didn't think that sex was a sin. Like, if you guys, there was this book called It's Perfectly Normal. It's kind of like a notorious book, but it's basically this book for kids. I think it's probably targeted toward like maybe kids that are just going through puberty or something, like 13, 14-year-olds. Anyway, it was a really controversial book. I don't know who wrote it. So you guys will have to look it up and tell me more about it. I probably should have researched this. But yeah, it's this book called It's Perfectly Normal, and it's all about like explaining sex and like sexuality for kids. Um, and for whatever reason, my sister had this book in her room, and I don't know if my mom bought it for her. I don't know where she got it. I need to ask my mom about it because I remember looking at it. Like I stole it out of my sister's room and was like looking at it, and it shows like it's like these illustrations of like naked people and like gay sex too. Yeah, it's actually I think this book was a big deal when it came out because people were like, this is like, basically pornography or whatever. But yeah, that book is basically, promoting the position that sex and sexuality is perfectly normal and it's not a sin and it's not anything to be ashamed of. And I think that is or was, I think while I was growing up, like the dominant view. Like this idea that sex is sinful or um, sex is only for marriage. Um, Even if that's the right view, that was not the dominant view. I mean, you see it everywhere. I don't know how this can even really be debated. Um, Everywhere you look, like, you guys remember like the American Pie movies? Like that's a really good example. And this is like teenage sex too. Like, I mean, it's basically promoting the idea that it's fine and like this idea that you should save it for marriage or that it's sinful outside of marriage is like people would laugh at you if you said that. Um, People just don't believe it. So that's, I think where a lot of people were coming from. And then like later in life, when you realize like that's a lie and that really all of the taboos surrounding sexuality have like a biological basis or, a real basis. Like there was a real reason for that. People bring this up a lot, that book by J.D. Unwin, I've mentioned this before too, from like the 20s, where he was saying there's a correlation between, um, society's sexuality and like, if basically, if people are too promiscuous, the society will collapse. But like, that's not the dominant view. The dominant view is that sex is perfectly normal and natural, and having it is good. Um, so Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I wanted to say about that. Uh, the other thing I wanted to bring up was, I don't know how many of you guys have watched or heard of there was this BBC documentary series called Civilization, A Personal View by Kenneth Clark. I think it came out in the 60s. And anyway, Kenneth Clark, I really like him actually. He is like this British guy. He's kind of like a high Tory person. I don't think he was like a churchgoer, but he had definitely had like either, really high church Anglican or Catholic sympathies. Um, and I think it shows. I know it shows actually in the, like he was basically kind of almost like a proto-reactionary. It's kind of amazing actually that well, actually, I don't know what the BBC was like in the 60s, and the BBC has also come, have had Roger Scruton and people like that had series too. So, I mean, there is sometimes cases where they show differing views in the documentary. But yeah, okay, so Kenneth Clark, it goes through all of Western civilization, and he, is basically saying that civilization doesn't, it's fragile, basically. Like it's the first episode is called "The Skin of Our Teeth," and he's basically saying that the only reason, like high civilization was able to survive was because of these monks copying manuscripts in far-flung islands on Scotland. And basically, while they were doing that, I mean, you can believe this or not, this is his view, that all of the rest of Europe was like plunging into darkness, and there were barbarian invasions and all of this thing. So yeah, he's basically promoting this idea civilization is fragile, it needs to foster, it needs to have, um, like a higher purpose. He says that you can sense, um, if a society has confidence or not by the type of architecture they build or what kind of art that they make. So he thinks that like confidence is the key. Like it has to have confidence in its own ideas, basically. And actually, yeah. So I saw that a few years ago. And then I can't remember why. The past yesterday or something, I thought of this series called what was it? How Shall We Then Live? I don't remember why I all of a sudden wanted to watch it. I kind of saw it like a few years ago too, but it was made by this guy named Francis Schaeffer. He was like an evangelical. He was like honestly kind of the I guess the godfather of the evangelical movement in like the late 60s, early 70s. So he made this documentary called How Shall We Then Live? And it's basically his answer to the Kenneth Clark BBC series. You guys should watch all of this, by the way. It's really interesting. Like watch both of them. Like watch one episode of How Shall We Then Live, and then watch an episode of Kenneth Clark's Civilization, and like note the differences. It's really interesting. But basically, yeah, that Francis Schaeffer, the evangelical guy, he thought that weirdly, which I didn't see it at all, he thought that the Kenneth Clark series was relativistic, or it was I think he like criticizes it for being too humanist. Like he doesn't like humanism. He wants like a biblical basis for society, and like he basically doesn't. He wrote another book called Escape from Reason. Like he doesn't trust in human reason to basically make a good society. So it's odd. Like in the I think like the second episode of that series, he says that Thomas Aquinas was like the first downfall of Western civilization because he basically started incorporating, um, like reason and Greek ideas into Christianity, which Francis Schaeffer doesn't like. And what's interesting is like that's like one of the whole reasons I like Thomas Aquinas, and I like that sort of like um, I don't want to say like Christian humanism. It is kind of Christian humanism though. No, it's like uh, don't. What am I trying to say here? I don't know. There's something about that whole like the Bible alone thing, like block out any alternative ideas that just doesn't seem convincing or stable to me. And what's really interesting actually is Francis Schaeffer's son. His name was Frankie Schaeffer, and when he was younger, he actually I think was one of the people that produced the TV series. So he was all about this like evangelical reactionary movement when he was younger. And then when he got older, I guess he converted to Eastern Orthodoxy. And then now I think he's like in his 60s. Now he's just like a total like globo homo paused secularist, basically. And I actually started listening to a little bit of an radio interview with him. He's just like, yeah, we can't, he's like, we can't be certain about anything. Everything is relative, or like he's just like a total, basically postmodernist. And that idea that we can't truly know anything or we can't be certain about anything, that's like basically the exact opposite of what Kenneth Clark is arguing for. Like, he's arguing for confidence. It's like, should Western civilization survive? Like, yes or no? Is that really so murky to answer that? Is there good and evil? Yes or no? I mean, like, does anyone aside from like Jim Goad really believe that there's no such thing as good and evil? Like, practically, it's like you may say that in a debate, but who really lives their life like that? That's kind of you know what it comes down to, I think. Anyway, I'm gonna look at the chat. Hold on. Oops. Hold on. Sorry. I do need to drive and not die. So. Yeah, I mean, Jim says that he believes that, and maybe he really does, but does he really behave that way? Probably not. No. I mean, it's silly. It's almost childish, you know? Uh, what else do you guys want me to talk about? I'm driving a Volkswagen Jetta. Yes, I know. It's quite nice. Leather seats. 2017. Do I think the New Testament is boring? No, I don't think it's boring, but I don't think that that's enough to like sustain an entire civilization on. It really kind of brings up more questions than it answers. I don't think that it was ever intended to be like a manifesto for an entire new religion or something like that. Like, it's the Gospels. I honestly think even the whole terminology, like calling it like the Bible, like, I think that's propaganda in a way. Like, that implies that that's like the only thing we should be reading or something. I don't like that attitude. It's anti-intellectual. And what's interesting is like people like Francis Schaeffer, he is an intellectual, but he's basically arguing that we should like abandon intellectualism, or like we shouldn't use reason, that we shouldn't mix reason and religion, I guess. Reason and revelation, people would say. The other thing that's interesting is like, you know, people criticize. Uh, okay, never mind. I'm not even gonna say it. Yeah, I agree with what Spider 58X said about human reason. I don't think um, people are generally governed by logic and reason, and they are. Oh, it's interesting. I don't know. No, oh no, I haven't talked about this yet. So I actually was watching this Richard Dawkins documentary, which is interesting. I actually used to really like Richard Dawkins a lot when I was younger. Anyway, the documentary, it's called The Enemies of Reason, and he basically goes around to like expose, kind of these like spiritual gurus or people promoting like astrology and alternative medicine and that type of thing. And what's interesting is I actually kind of agreed with him on a lot of that. Like, I think that majority of that is, superstition, and it's fake, and it's a ploy to get your money. Um, I agree with that. But the other thing about going around and saying like, atheism is the answer because all of these astrologers are liars. It is kind of low-hanging fruit. Like I highly doubt, Richard Dawkins is gonna go into like a Dominican monastery and like expose them. Like he would just look like an idiot if he tried to do that. Um, but I didn't. What was weird? It was another one of those BBC documentaries, which I do like watching them. Like they're not all good, obviously. Actually, there was a remake of Kenneth Clark's Civilization that came out in like 2018. I'm not even gonna watch it though. I know it would be paused. Like there's just no way that it wouldn't. Um, but oh yeah, back to the Richard Dawkins thing. Yeah, so he's going around exposing all these people, and then he's like promoting this idea that everything is random and that nothing has meaning. Like that's what he says. And at that point, I'm just like, well, wait, how do you know that? Like that's. And then I was like, this really is like state sanctioned like atheism, like in Russia or something. It's like this is what everyone's supposed to be convinced by. But I honestly don't think Richard Dawkins even has like that many followers. Like the people, like the Fedora atheists, like that's always gonna be kind of not that popular. I mean, I know it's popular, but it's like I think people just get bored with it after a little while. It's like, haha, you're stupid for like believing that not everything is random and like, the universe has meaning and like life has meaning. Like really? It's not very productive. I'll say that. Okay, so now I have 22 people watching and I'm running out of stuff to say. What's the problem with these like solo streams? I'd someone I'd rather talk to someone. Then I can bounce ideas. Even if the person never agrees with me, which is usually what happens. The chat usually agrees to a certain extent. Um, Another interesting thing that you guys should watch if you're looking for things to watch is I saw this a while ago. There was a debate between Peter Hitchens, like that atheist guy, and David Allen White. And basically, David Allen White, he was like this, or he's still alive. He's like a English professor, Catholic convert guy, um, and he's basically makes the same arguments that I am. It's like, well, if there's no religion, there's no culture, there's nothing. If you have nothing to die for, you have nothing to live for. Just like these kind of, I don't want to say pragmatic because that's not very spiritual, but I mean, yeah, kind of pragmatic arguments. It's like he was basically asking Peter Hitchens, like, do you think the world would be better off without the Cathedral of Notre Dame? And Peter's like, no. And it's like, well, no one's building a Notre Dame anymore. I mean, I guess that's kind of, and some people are going to be like, oh, well, like the pyramids of Egypt were pretty. Okay, but they weren't atheists either. I just don't think atheism, capital atheism, has ever really like inspired anything, except for people wearing fedoras or something. uh, yeah. What else do you guys think? I'm gonna look at the chat again. Christopher and Peter Hitchens are Jews because they're really? I didn't know that they were Jewish. Peter Hitchens is like a Christian. I didn't know they had any Jewish ancestry at all. I thought they were just pure Anglo. I don't know. Yeah, they had a great great grandmother who was a Jew. I mean, that's not saying much. A great great grandmother. So they were like 1/16 Jewish ancestry. Okay. I don't think Richard Dawkins is Jewish. Sam Harris is. Sam Harris is like better than those people though in a way though because he's actually like a spiritual person. Even if it's like fake spirituality, at least he like understands like the importance of that, I guess. Like he doesn't just ignore it. I'm not saying I like Sam Harris, but he's the more spiritual atheist. Yeah. Well, if you guys don't have any ideas for what I should say, I'm just gonna end this and maybe I'll do another stream later and talk more about Kenneth Clark after I watch more of it. Um, Richard Dawkins, though, he hasn't he been saying some stuff like I know he said he does kind of understand like the cultural implications of atheism. Like he said that he thinks that every child in England should like read the Bible in school and like um that sort of thing. I swear I saw some headline not that long ago where he was saying he's like Christian or something. I don't know. The problem with that like vague spiritualism though, where you're like, oh yeah, like Christianity has as much, um, is like just the same as like the Bhagavad Gita or something. Like that's not the confidence that Kenneth Clark is talking about. And I think he may be onto something. That confidence is what creates civilization, not skepticism. I don't think skepticism really creates anything. He claimed he was a cultural Christian. Yeah, this idea of being like cultural Christian, I get it. I get it. But I don't think I don't know if that's really works either. Well, you guys are saying don't go, so I guess I won't go, but I just don't really, I'm running out of ideas. I don't want to bore everyone. I guess no one's streaming though. No one's been doing any streams lately, have they? Guess I'll have to, pick that back up again. Yeah, I'll have to pick it back up again and it'd be easier if I wasn't driving because I actually wrote down a couple notes of things that I wanted to say, but I can't look at it. And I can't even really look at your chat right now because I don't want to crash my car. Okay, I'm going to a light now, so now I can look. Let's see. What are my views on abortion? Uh, I think that the Christian right has spent way too much energy trying to ban abortion when I don't actually think that stops anyone from getting an abortion. Like what stops people from getting an abortion is like cultural propaganda basically or convincing people that abortion is bad. But and that's I don't want to say I feel the same way about pornography. I do think there's definitely a lot of merit to this idea that why is pornography so easily accessible to children? Like I definitely saw it when I was like 9 on the internet. and that's messed up. Like, why is it just so easy to just like stumble across it? It's like we regulate like online gambling more than we do pornography. Like, which one's worse, you know? So yeah, that's a problem. So I don't know if like yeah, I don't know if it's the same thing with the abortion thing. Like the anti-abortion crusade felt has always felt to me just like too much of like an absolute obsession to at the detriment of things that I think could be more productive. I'm not saying I'm like for abortion or that it's good or whatever. I just think that the obsessive focus on it has not been productive, and no one ever points that out. Maybe people on like the alt right point it out, but yeah. And then I just don't think it's really stopped people from getting abortions. And also like it's even if people were to ban abortion in a state or something, it would like it's temporary. It's like a temporary victory. Temporal. Like if people want to win, they need to like win hearts and minds. No, okay, here was a good example of really good anti-abortion propaganda was the movie Juno. Because also the thing about that movie is it's subtly pro-life, and it's not like one of these things where it's like so in your face about it, or like I don't know if you guys have those billboards in your area. Like we have anti-abortion billboards. I don't really think that works. Like I don't think that that's how human psychology works. Like human psychology works by you know kind of I think like getting people's emotions involved. And that's why that movie like it was well made. So I think that's the type of thing that convinces people. That's the reason Hollywood has been so successful about getting into people's psyches. Guys, like don't critique my appearance. Like I don't have like, you know, it's not a good angle. Maybe I do need to pluck my eyebrows. Maybe they're just thick. um yeah. You guys can just argue with each other in the chat now, 'cause I don't have much to say. Yeah, Tom, you're exactly right. It's the only thing that they fight over obsessively for some reason. It's like these people are like one issue zealots basically. And I can't get behind that. I'm not saying like it's not an issue, but the obsessive focus on it is unattractive to me. I don't think it's not a good look, and I don't think it accomplishes anything. You want me to pluck my eyeballs out? Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Ugh, this is a silent stream. I'm not okay. Now you're gonna say like caring about. That's not what I said. I said the obsessive. You guys, I know there are people that agree with me about this. The obsessive focus on abortion is not productive. That's what I'm saying. I know, I know there. Tom agrees with me. All of the reasonable people agree with me. Okay, I gotta go. Maybe I'll do this later. Okay, thank you, visionary. I knew it. Yeah, it's like they're one issue voters. That's the only thing that they think about.